want to talk a little bit about video surveillance from a perspective of, when I look around this area, our camera locations and mounting locations and areas we need to view can vary widely in this environment.
Definitely.
So I see, side of the building here. I see a parking lot out here. Things that vary are going to be lighting, for instance.
Even different kinds of light. It looks like the parking lot has LED lights where more than likely the bulbs on the side of the buildings and some of the other lights are incandescent lights.
And there might be sodium vapor lighting also.
So absolutely.
These different lighting sources can provide challenges for cameras. And I also see the far end of the parking lot. It looks pretty dark out there, so it might be a rather dark environment.
Sure. Where the sun comes up, reflections off of the glass or any of those things.
So one of the nice things about Bosch cameras is a feature which we want to show people called scene mode, that regardless of where we put these cameras, we can select internal in the configuration of the camera a particular scene that might be relevant to where that camera is mounted.
And gives the best image from the camera at that lighting level or that specific area.
Exactly, so I can care less or be a little less concerned about the different lighting, just knowing that I can apply that camera and select the right scene to give me the best usable picture in that area.
Absolutely. Flexibility that brings is immense, so
yeah.
It's a great feature.
Let's step back inside and take a look at that inside the camera where we actually program that.
Okay.
So Steve, we're back inside now. We have an IP camera connected to a laptop and a network switch. So currently we're web browsing to this camera. And what I want to do now is look at some of the features that are available to help us with these different scenes that we identified outside, the different conditions that we might have to locate a camera.
Sure.
And how in our configuration we can change some settings to help us with those different conditions.
One thing is these are features that are available in setup of the camera. So it doesn't matter what VMS you're using. This is all stuff that can be set up in the camera via the web browser or using Bosch Configuration Manager to do. So again, agnostic to a VMS.
That's a very good point.
Function of the camera.
Correct.
We're into the web browser in the configuration tab, as you can see, and we're going down into the camera tab and then to the scene mode tab. There's a drop down here which gives us a choice between some pre-programmed modes.
I see that. So that's our scene mode we're selecting, and we did look at some of those scenes that could vary outside. And I see some of the ones we identified. I mean, there's night optimized if it's low light. There's a traffic mode we can select, and I know that's for movement. And it helps us with those moving vehicles.
Correct. So a couple of different things. Standard mode is a really good mode. And again, these are all just pre-tuned by the software engineers and the camera engineers at Bosch. And I'll show you a little bit later on how we can maybe change these to be very specific for a challenge that may exist in a scene setting that you're doing. So standard mode is just that. It's just out of the box mode. It's kind of optimized. It gives the ability for the camera to change from black and white to color at a certain time. It balances all of the different settings in the color out to be kind of that once and done out of the box type setting.
Sure.
Sodium lighting, that setting is to offset the tone or the color or the temperature of the light, and it can kind of make sure that the colors are true colors. As everybody knows, if sodium light's in the scene and as the primary light, it's kind of like putting on glasses. I'm a little bit colorblind, so I struggle with the right tone, but it's either that orangey pink color or some other tone that it just is reflective. The camera's trying to recreate a picture. What this does is offset that so that the colors, the yellows are yellow and greens are green and reds are red, they're true tone colors. So that setting has just been optimized under that. As you mentioned, traffic, camera on a pole, we're all familiar with looking at traffic at rush hour. This just allows the camera to produce the best image under those type lighting conditions and with that, that number of moving objects and the speed at which those objects are moving. Night optimized, I think night optimized gives you some reflectance on how best to set up the camera in those type of environments. As you can see, there's other things, the intelligent AE, the vibrant mode, the low bit rate, sports and gaming, retail, and LPR. So there are, out of the box, these selectable modes that are tuned at Bosch by the Bosch engineers.
I think the idea is when, with a Bosch camera, you're not just getting a basic camera, which is going to give you a basic image, that we can actually deliver. The goal is to make the customer ecstatic with the field of view and the scene that they're seeing. So
right, the image that the camera creates has to be as true as what you were, if you were to walk outside and see with your own eyes. That's the goal, would be for the camera to recreate that.
Delivering a great image for the customer.
Right. One of the neat things I want to point out is, again, these are all pre-programmed out of the box. You can do some pretty neat things with these. You can actually give, as I mentioned, you can create a very customized mode. So you can copy this mode. If you drop this down, you can copy a mode to a different mode and then give it a different name. So in an area, when we were outside, we were talking about darker parts of the parking lot, or parts of the parking lot that may have different lighting. Let's say the facility's in the process of changing from a sodium vapor type lighting to the more traditional LEDs, which are that clear blue color of light. This gives you a lot of flexibility to basically mix and match things and change settings in the camera to customize how the camera reacts, and provides the camera with that ability to make that best picture for your specific scene. So along those lines, you have all these other choices, and when you go in and you start to make changes to these choices that you see, each one of these is going to have an effect on the camera. What will happen is you can make these changes and then save that as a customized mode built within the camera. Why would you do that? The modes are actually, you can actually switch between the modes based on feedback from a VMS or a contact closure or so on and so forth. So you can actually switch between modes so that daytime you're using one mode and in the evening you're using a separate mode. Or if there's some event that's triggered, you can even use that event to change between the modes for that optimal image.
That's great. I mean, I can select, obviously, the pre-programmed modes that are going to help deliver a better image for the customer. Or if I want to, I can take a deeper dive and create specific custom modes that specifically apply to that
field of view
in the scene that we're trying to make an image.
Right.
Now, that's great. I mean, these are strong features that Bosch offers. So it's interesting you mentioned these pre-programmed modes, and there may be applications where the standard mode is going to fit, right? But we can't assume that any one of these is going to be the right fit or the correct fit. We may have to try them. For instance, a vibrant mode sounds great. It punches up the colors and gives me more vibrance in the scene.
Right. So one of the things that having the opportunity to spend some time with some of the product managers from Bosch and understand why things like this exist. One of the things is we're all trained to look at the image a little differently, and what I want out of an image is very different than probably what you want. And the thing that matters the most is what the customer wants.
Sure.
Some customers are attuned to a very bright, punchy picture where the colors are very saturated. That most comes from home AV.
Consumer goods.
Correct. So when you're watching TV at home, there's a purpose for them to tune those pictures to the way that they do, so that the pictures are very bright and very punchy. So greens are really, really green, and reds are really, really red, and yellows are really, really yellow. What that does, or what that can do to the image, is it can limit the the camera's ability to transition between certain tones. So an example, black and white. If you've tuned the camera to vibrant, the camera has very little difference, that knows very little difference between the black and the white. Well, as we know, there are grayscales, and there's 16-bit, 256-bit, there's all these different capabilities that the camera may have. So if I'm looking into an area that's very shadow-ridden, and it's shadows where there's a lot of bright light, and then say underneath of a tree or underneath of a loading dock, areas like that where there's a definite transition between what's going on in the scene. What this does is some of these settings and these capabilities allow you to be able to go in, and instead of it being hard black or hard white, I want to see what's in that shaded area, or what's in that area that is in those shadows. This gives you the capability to have that setting of, I want to see black and white, or I want to see yellow, green, red, very in that saturated tone, which customers are used to seeing because of TVs. All this other stuff is flexibility to get you the capability to maybe I didn't realize that if I did this vibrant setting, I was losing all that depth underneath of that tree in that shade, or underneath of that overhang in the loading dock, or around some other specific area that doesn't have the same kind of light that another area has. So all these settings give you the capability to customize that and get away from that black or white or yellow, green, red. You know, it gives you the capability of fluctuation, which brings a lot of things out in the image that you may not know that you're losing. So these are important things to understand about what these modes can do for you. Standard for Bosch is every day out of the box. It's what we believe, it's what the engineers believe that the camera best performs at in an out-of-box situation, general. But again, as you've discussed with me, the modes give us the capability to easily go in and select some predetermined settings, or go that much further and customize it 100% to what my field of view or what your field of view is.
The key word you used there was flexibility, that if perhaps with a competitor's camera, you get the image that you get. But with Bosch, we have flexibility. We can adjust that image based on a lot of the conditions in that area. And again, delivering the customer a great image.
That's what's most important, right, exactly.
All right, very well put.
Thanks.
Thank you.